Hi, and a great big warm welcome to episode 30, season 2 of the Ask Zofie podcast. As I'm sitting here to record, it feels like ages since I recorded the last episode, although it's actually less than a week. So I don't know what that's all about or how that works, but anyway, that's what I'm feeling right now. As I record, it is a beautiful sunny day, probably for me, the optimum temperature because it's about, I don't know, 22 degrees. So not so hot that you get all hot and sweaty, but warm enough that you can just wear, a skirt or shorts or whatever floats your boat and just like on Saturday I went to Sandbanks in Bournemouth with Daniel, and actually it was a bit cloudy and a bit breezy, but when the sun was there it was just that you can see Laffy in the background making her podcast appearance. If you're watching this on YouTube, it was just the most, for me, blissful feeling of that just perfectly pleasant warmth. So as I'm looking out, I'm facing my balcony and I'm on the second floor, so I can see the sky and loads of trees. And it is so nice to observe that as I sit to record, thinking, wow, it feels like it's been ages, but it hasn't. Anyway, just as I was getting ready to record this, I I joke that I'm like Princess and the Pea. I'm like the most fussiest person on the planet. It's just part of who I am. So I'm really particular when it comes to whatever it is, whether it's doing my work or like stuff at home. And also that can come down to then my appearance. So I'm keeping an eye because Laffy is desperately trying to escape through the tiny little crack in the patio door onto the balcony, which I don't think she can get through. I definitely don't want her to get through, but she was just attempting to. Anyway, as I was sitting here getting prepped to record, I was like, oh, I don't like how this is my left eye, right? My left eyelashes are looking a bit kind of wonky. I'm going to go fix those. And the reason I'm telling you this is my behind the scenes. There's two kind of lessons in here related to this. When I was getting divorced from my ex-husband, I had a workshop to do. And it was at this festival that I used to go to every year. And it was a pretty quote unquote big deal. And I really wanted to do a good job of it. But I was going through some stuff. Things were absolutely challenging for me. I was under a lot of pressure at that point. So I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. And I was a little bit mindful that will I have it in me to show up and do what I need to be doing. But I was like, do you know what? This isn't about me. This is about maybe even just one person in the audience who needs to hear one thing that I'm going to say that is going to be possibly just really soothing, uplifting, helpful, a game changer for them. And my point is, whether you do a job like mine or something completely different, that's not the issue here. Anytime you're able to make what you're doing, the task at hand, about more than just you. So like as a parent, it might be, I don't know, you're tired, you're fed up, you're overwhelmed. This happens, right? If you're a parent or just living life without kids or whatever. If you can remember, do you know what? Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on Laffy's like doing her best to give me heart palpitations here. You can remember, okay, I'm here, this is my duty right now to be here for this baby, this child, this client, whatever it might be. Now, as ever, the kind of caveat here, she's desperately trying to get out there, causing my blood pressure to rise. Luckily, I have low blood pressure, so I've got a bit of wiggle room there. But anyway, if you can, if you're able to step into that space of it's about more than me, it's about this other person or these other people, as I was just going to say, the caveat, the sort of disclaimer, the add-on here is there'll be times when you can't do this. You're just too unwell or struggling or whatever, and this is completely fine. Don't use this as a rod to beat yourself with. Never, ever, ever do that with what I tell you or what anyone tells you, because obviously that's not loving. That's not the vibe. But whenever you're able to, and most of the time we can, drag yourself out of thinking about you and your stuff and focus on them and their stuff, it it will benefit them, of course, but ultimately it will benefit you because you tap into your divinity when you do this. And then the other point I want to say is that it's not selfish at the same time. It's not selfish to tend to yourself, to take care of yourself, whether this is taking a nap when you need it, or taking some time to yourself, or something that's apparently more shallow, like looking after how you look. Like, what I've always said is that when you look after yourself, you get into this space where you're over yourself and you're really therefore able to be present for, again, whoever is showing up in front of you. So it's these two things. It's recognizing that when you can make it about someone else, something other than, something more than perhaps you benefit and you're able to bring your divinity to the table. And at the same time, when you're able to tend to yourself first, that also enables that to happen. So it might seem shallow or inconsequential. Your mind or your ego might tell you this, to go get your hair done or your nails done, or if you're a guy, go get one of those, what is it, like Turkish shave things. Obviously I'm not a guy, I don't do those things. I've only heard about those things from guys in my life. But looking after yourself, showing up for yourself, is not selfish. On the contrary, it's ultimately has the potential to be the most selfless thing that you can do. I was listening to a teacher talk the other day about appearance and stuff, and she was talking herself round to the fact that it's of high service for her to look a certain way or whatever, because of course when she does, she can show up comfortably and confidently and do her best. And I've always thought this, that I've had people, well, a person in particular in my life who just could not understand me, because he's like, why are you doing this and now this and now this? Like, I don't get you. And it's like, I am led by love fundamentally, and it mostly it's like, what's going to enable me to show up in the most loving manner? When I think about being a mum and my children, I want to be in my home with them, just in my softness and in my femininity, and at the same time strong and nurturing and warm and loving. And I can't fully do that. You can't fully do that. None of us can fully do that if we are not tending to ourselves. Okay, I don't know why I've gone a little bit overboard on that. Maybe someone needed to hear that. But that's kind of the stuff that I used to speak to when I did a workshop, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was all on self-care. And I've mentioned this before, Wayne Dyer said, this notion that looking after yourself is selfish is completely bonkers, because the opposite is true. When we become anxious or depressed or whatever it might be, when our mental health suffers, that's when we naturally become the most selfish, because we just don't even have the bandwidth to even contemplate showing up for other people, because we've got so much of our own stuff going on. So it's just another BS narrative of ego that says doing those things, in other words, looking after yourself, is selfish. It's BS. Anyway, I'm not going to go on and on about that. I am going to get to the topic at some point, which is, what am I calling this episode? I don't know what I'm going to call it, but the question that I'm answering from one of my followers is, can I manifest for someone else? I'm going to get to that in just a minute, because I've got a lot to say on the topic. But before that, I've lost some of my copies of Love Notes, and this is a random one that's got the wrong font on the front that I don't like using. But just, yeah, if you're watching, if you're just listening, you won't know anyway, but if you're watching, ignore the font. You're probably thinking, what do you mean, Zofie? But that's an example of me being so picky. It's like, no, not 100% right, therefore I just can't deal. But let's pick us a page from Love Notes. And again, I think I said this last week, I'm twinning with my book, which I do like. Let's see what comes up, and then I will get, I promise, to the topic at hand. At hand? In hand? At hand. I think it's at hand, whatever it is. Oh, can you see, by the way, again, if you're watching on YouTube, yesterday, Daniel and I did some DIY. So we put up a dado rail, and soon I'm going to make some like squares, so it looks like paneling on the walls in my hallway. And I'm really chuffed. I think I know once that's painted, it's going to like seriously up level my hallway, which I'm really excited about. But anyway, let me just do the Love Notes pick. I will get there, I promise. Bear with me, and then we'll get to the topic at hand. Okay, so I'm going to go with the not the first page I looked at, but the second page out of the 2 pages, which is page 52. And it says, "Listen carefully for me, for I speak in loving, lulling whispers, my dear. Come home to me now." And the reason that one versus the other page jumped out at me is that I was thinking about this just before I started to record. I mention her all the time, Oprah. I'm less obsessed with her now because she's not on TV in the same way as she used to be, but I really was obsessed with her, but I still adore her anyway. And there's a bunch of things. Maybe I should do a whole episode, I think, actually, on things I learned from Oprah, because there are a bunch of things that landed and really resonated with me. And one of them was, I remember her saying that what happens in life is that the universe, the divine, God, whatever, will firstly whisper, then it's going to say something, then it's going to shout, and then you'll get like whacked over the head. It's like these messages come through, but very commonly we stubbornly resist, ignore, shut down. And so, yeah, what came up in Love Notes reminded me of that. Listen carefully for me, for I speak in loving, lulling whispers, my dear. Of course, so much of the world is noisy, and if you're not open to and listening for those loving, lulling whispers of the divine, they're going to go unnoticed, which is in part what's so powerful and beautiful about slowing down, getting quiet. I was knackered this morning for myriad reasons, and I went and did a personal training session with my friend Siobhan. Shout out to you, Siobhan, who definitely worked my glutes. She gave me what I asked for. Anyway, I got back and I was like, oh, I'm going to lay down for 10 minutes. And I kept snoozing because I could not bring myself round. And why was I telling about this? I can't remember. But yeah, the power of slowing down. It's like I can sort of force myself to get up and come and start recording, but it doesn't feel kind to me. It doesn't feel necessary, and it doesn't feel like when I do so, I'm going to have the right or the best, the optimum energy and impact. Because, like I say all the time, energy is everything. And we live in a world where that often isn't valued, you know, the impact of softness, of gentleness, of slowness, of less, and so on and so forth. But there is real might innate in that kind of space. Anyway, let me get to the question. So, as I said, one of my followers asked me, basically, she was asking me about a situation in her life, and she asked me, can I manifest for someone else? And I have, unlike last week, got loads of notes, so I'm going to keep checking them. And I'm going to share with you my take, okay? As you will probably know, I have been an avid student of spirituality, law of attraction, mindset, manifestation. I've worked as a coach in this field for whatever it is, 17, 18 years. I've honestly lost track, and studying it in earnest for about 20 years. And I like to go deep on topics. And so I have researched and listened and studied and trained and coached for heaps of hours across, you know, spanning many years, and learned, and I'm still learning. At the moment, I'm doing MBA, which is Catherine Zinkina's sort of signature course, Manifestation Babe Academy, which takes 20 weeks, all things manifestation. And as I said in my members email today, I know a lot of this stuff because I've been doing it so long, right? But at the same time, I'm still studying and learning. And as I said in this morning's email to members, coming at this stuff with a beginner's mindset, because you can hear something 20 times and then the 21st time it just hits differently and you suddenly go, oh my God, it's unlocked something for me. But the point is, again, I'm off piece, but the point is, I'm just going to share with you my take on this. And what I want to say is that just because A, B, or C works for someone else doesn't mean that specifically is going to work for you. My take is I always, and I want this for me and for you, don't ever let what someone else tells you take precedence over your inner knowing, what you tapping into your divinity tells you, because that's always going to be the truest, fullest wisdom for you. But what I'm sharing is my take on this stuff. Okay, so as ever, take that with a kind of a pinch of salt, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, have an open mind. And that's, in my opinion, the best way to kind of listen to what I'm imparting, or any point when you're learning stuff. So what I want to say is two things and many other things, but two main things. Firstly, the short answer is no, we can't manifest in the lives of others, which I'll go into more depth on in just a moment. And secondly, really, the quality of the questions we ask is key in life. And what I would say is, this isn't the best question to be asking in this situation. Okay. And again, I'm going to elaborate on that in just a moment. So the first thing I want to say in terms of can I manifest for someone else is that we all have free will in our lives. Have you noticed? Like, from my perspective, God, the universe, the divine, the creator or whatever, loves us so much, loves you so much, that that essence is willing to allow you, like anyone who is a parent, or if you have a partner, but I think more so than in any sort of situation in life, if you're a parent, it's not easy to let your kids, go off and do stuff. My son has just gone off for a week on his school trip, and there's a part of me that's like, oh my God, he's gonna like have something terrible happen to him. He can't speak to me. He's gonna, all these different things that my mind wants to tell me is gonna happen, and it can trigger so much fear. So for me, I'm like, can you imagine being the divine and just permitting all to be, which comes from a space and a place of such deep love and compassion, that you're willing to not control. Like, that just blows my mind. Anyway, we all have free will, and so we can control other people, we can manipulate. Like, this happens all day, every day in the world in which we live, where people are supposed to be loving on each other, but really they're controlling and manipulating, and so on and so forth. But on a spiritual level, no, we all have free will, and we're all on our individual paths. So we all, I believe, also have our inner being, that divinity within us, the voice of God, whatever you want to think of it as. And if you're trying to create something for someone else, you're trying to wish something for someone else, it's like, and I heard this from Abraham Hicks, remember that everyone has source energy talking to them, flowing through them all day, every day. And while it can be in some ways easier, so I was just checking I was recording there, if you're wondering why my eyes are going across, if it can be nice to have, like, if someone's in a coaching session with me and I tell them something and they're sat there in their human body and I'm there in my human body, and they hear it from another person, that can be potent and powerful. But ultimately, we're all getting nudges and winks and messages from the divine all day long. And so if they're not going to listen to that, you are not more powerful than that. Okay, the other thing is, and actually this helps me loads with my kids, particularly my son Vincent, because he's such a free spirit, and I know, according to human design and who he is, he craves freedom and autonomy, which obviously, as a parent, as I just mentioned, is like the worst thing. But it's remembering that he has, like I said to him the other day, I said, we were talking about, parents thinking they know better than their kids and this, that, and the other. And I said, I know that while you're an 11-year-old boy in an 11-year-old boy's body, that's not the entirety of who you are. You're an infinite being. You are divinity flowing through this body, this physical experience. And so that really helps me to remember, like, you might see a tiny baby in distress, or a toddler, or someone who's weak in the physical world, but that's not the entirety of who they are. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And so we don't know, this other person that we want to manifest on behalf of, or manifest for, we don't know their path. Now, in all honesty, I was talking about this the other day, like, this sometimes baffles me, or I think about this and I'm not sure what my kind of ultimate answer is. But there are some people on this planet who on a human level are just not kind. They are what I would think of as maybe asleep, or sort of unconscious to their divinity, this, that, they've forgotten who they truly are, and they're not treating people in a loving, compassionate way, ultimately they are being driven by and led by and fueled by fear. And I'm like, I don't know if that person, like before they were born, signed this soul contract to be like the baddie in this lifetime, you know, because I believe that we live just over and over again. And of course, that makes sense, therefore, that you're probably going to be horrible in one life and great in another, and I don't know, wealthy in one and poor in another, and all these different experiences. So I'm like, there are people in my life who are not particularly loving towards me or kind. And I'm like, I don't know if they just fell asleep once they were born, or if they agreed to that. And I'm not sure what I think about that, or if it's a bit of both. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter. But they could have made a soul agreement, for example, to go through some stuff. And I sometimes think of it as like characters in a play. You know, it's like, okay, well, in this game of life, you can be the perpetrator, I'll be the victim. You can be, you know, play this part and I'll play that part. I don't know, but we can't know for sure what will come from the unwanted in someone else's experience. Now, there are loads of people out there, and we all have heard of these people who, and I can't remember the girl's name, but there was a girl who had acid thrown in her face, and it really disfigured her, for want of a better word. And I think she went on to achieve great success in she achieved some level of fame or notoriety or whatever, and really grew from it. And somebody was telling me the other day about a guy who was in the Marines or something like that, and he lost, I think, one arm and both of his legs or something along those lines. And he's gone on to make great strides forward in his life. And there were just so many examples of this where you're like, oh my God, that thing they went through. There's someone else, I can't think who it is now. Really horrible. And when I went to Spain last September, the guy who was running the Airbnb, similar thing had happened to him. He had loads of stresses, and I think he was attacked when he was in London, and that was like the final straw for him to just get out of his busy life that wasn't working for him, and ended up in this most beautiful spot, this most beautiful place, and this really peaceful existence. So we don't know, you know, I call it the divine compost, or like Abraham Hicks would call it the contrast, the unwanted, the maybe the darkness of our lives or the lives of others. We don't know what's going to come from that. And it's like, you know, as I said earlier, there's part of me that definitely would like to just keep my children like at home in the cotton wool 24/7, like, okay, they're as safe as they can be. But naturally, that is not healthy. That is going to deny them so their lives ultimately. So it's recognizing that as well. And I think it's seeing, like I talk about, when someone is unkind to you, it's like treating it on these two levels. One is F you and one is thank you. And I say F you might be on a human level, like you might put boundaries in place, assert yourself, take them out of your life, whatever it might be. That sounded really like way more dramatic than I meant, but I don't think anything dodgy. But anyway, just remove them from your life. And then on a spiritual level, it's the thank you, because they have triggered something in you. They've been able to grow. They've shown you something, whatever it might be. And it's that same thing. If you see someone in your life struggling, you can understand that you might be able to do something to support them on the physical level, but also there's the non-physical, the spiritual level that's taking place at the same time. That is like, don't forget that really important piece of the puzzle. Otherwise, things seem scary when they needn't be. And we don't know what's truly best for that other person. We might think we do, but we don't have the eyes in the sky like their divinity does. We just have this smaller human perspective. And so again, it comes down to trusting that. And so I did a podcast way back when, which talked about what to do when your partner is grumpy. And in that podcast, in essence, what I was talking about was focus most of your energy on you, and then like 80% you, 20% them. And I want to say the same here. So instead of asking the question, can I manifest for someone else? It's like the better question to ask is, how can I best influence this person in a positive way? And so the best chance you have, whether it's someone who's struggling or someone like your child that you want to influence in a positive way, is, of course, you're probably already saying this before I'm going to say it, you probably know what I'm going to say, is to lead by example. And then, look, if you are joyful, if you're working on yourself, if you are healthy, if you have healthy boundaries, if you love your life, whatever it might be, some people are going to be triggered by that and put off. That's their stuff, and there's nothing that you can do about that. But some people who are ready will see you as a point of, as a source of inspiration. And this power of influence that we all have is something not to be underestimated. So we tend to go overboard trying to take action and maybe persuade them and so on and so forth. But when again you focus on you and showing up in this energy, we have the potential, the power to impact others with our energy when we're really positive. So really it's tending to yourself first, like that metaphor of the oxygen mask, when they say on a plane, if you need oxygen, put your own mask on before you help any of your dependents. It's that same thing. So keep focusing on you first. I'm trying to read my notes here. Yeah, so remembering, I've touched upon this already actually, soothe yourself by reminding yourself that they have an inner being. They have divinity on their side. They have their own inner guidance. And that just like for you, for me, for all of us, the entire universe is for them, is working in their favor, is co-creating with them. And yeah, they may or may not be able to hear it or to listen or be listening to it, but you can be an example of that, and you can soothe yourself. Because if you, metaphorically speaking, don't have your oxygen mask on and you pass out, you can't help anybody. So your best shot at this is to tend to you, to stay in your own lane. And again, I remember Oprah saying this when she first started. She just didn't look at the what's it called, the viewing numbers or whatever it is of her competitors, because she was like, that just me taking my attention off for just a moment could be enough that I lose the race. And it's just like, yes, stay in your own lane. And last week I obviously did, or not obviously, you might not have listened to it, but I did a podcast all about if you have an undefined solar plexus in human design, part of your lesson is to get that you're not here to fix other people and their stuff. And the person who asked me this question, I wouldn't be surprised if she has an undefined solar plexus. And so that's part of it. If someone's going through stuff, whether it's a small or just an inner wave or in a bigger way in life, it's not up to us to swoop in and help them, because that could be like smothering them and actually stopping them from achieving what I call the flip side, when the blooms come out from the divine compost. And of course, you don't want to do that, because that's to their benefit, and denying them that is to their detriment. And ultimately, it's not the most loving thing to do, but you got to soothe yourself to be able to permit that to happen. So ultimately, I think this is all about two things: focus and faith. So focusing on yourself first and foremost, focusing on yourself, your energy, what you're doing, how you're showing up, who you're being, how you're being, predominantly first and foremost. And then really amping up your faith, telling yourself what you need to hear. That question I love: what do I need to hear? So you have woes or worries or concerns relative to someone in your life. What do I need to hear? There's a divine purpose to all pain in life. This could be the best thing that's ever happened to them. They will come through this. They have divinity on their side. They have the entire universe rooting for them. They are loved. They are safe. We all are. Whatever it takes to up your faith levels. And think about, like I've said, examples of people who've been through stuff. Like sometimes Daniel and I talk about this because we've both been in unhealthy relationships and come out happier, and obviously been through divorce. And so when we see other people, as we were, like scared to leave their unhappy marriages, we're like, come on, what's on the other side of it is, you have such a potential for more love and joy and so on and so forth. And so think about examples of people who you know personally or just from social media, whatever it might be, TV, films, whatever, who have gone through stuff and it has been the making of them. I am pretty much obsessed with backstories for this reason, because they're like, yeah, there's a purpose to all of this pain. It can all be used. One of the things that I learned from Amanda Francis, that she said she learned from I never know how you say this word, pastor, in America, a pastor. It sounds like I'm saying pasta, but a pastor. I need to figure out I need to nail that word. Was God is using your trials and tribulations for your good and in your favor. Like, how soothing and helpful and powerful is that? Or it definitely is for me. Anyway, so yeah, faith that I've written here, we're all being tended to, loved, and looked after, including this person that you're thinking, oh, I wish I could manifest this thing for them, or wish I could just get this through to them. It's not easy. Like, I remember there's someone, I'm not going to say who it is actually, but there's someone in my, I don't know if it's extended family, what you call it, but in my family who sadly became addicted to drugs many years ago now, and most likely will never not be in that position where they're addicted to drugs. And when my nan was still alive, she used to be so worried about this person, understandably so. And it is so not easy. Like, if you have someone in your life who is an addict, or you can just see that they're I don't know, maybe they're in an unhealthy relationship, or they're mentally unwell, whatever it might be, it is not easy. So these two things that I've shared in terms of focus and faith will really help you to manage. But at the same time, I also feel called to say, give yourself grace. And yeah, it's not easy. And again, this is why when I think about the love that what I would call God has for each of us, it just like is beyond anything I can begin to contemplate, because my sense is that that divinity loves so truly and fully and potently and powerfully that it is willing to permit us to do anything and everything and potentially vilify that part of ourselves and separate or seemingly separate ourselves from that divinity. But it's willing for that to happen in order to enjoy the experience of being loved, that love being reciprocated from us when we realize, oh my God, I am a part of this essence, and this essence is ultimately and only love, and really sinking into that. Anyway, got a bit deep at the end. Okay, I super hope that this helps. If you've got any questions, as ever, please DM me. It's probably the easiest way. You can email me, but DM me, whatever, just get in touch. I really hope that you've enjoyed the episode. And if you're in the UK like me, I know not everyone who listens is, but you get to enjoy some sunshine. I will be back. I think it's a bank holiday next week, but my plan is to do a podcast anyway. If I don't, I'll be back in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Lots of love.